I'm staring at the fluorescent light above my ER bed when my dad's dog tags clink against the metal rail. "What are you?" he whispers, loud enough for the nurse to flinch as the doctor explains my blood type doesn't match either of my parents. Heat climbs my throat. His old brass coin burns a circle into my palm. If I don't match them on paper, then suddenly I'm not sure I match them at all. The light hums in this high, buzzing way that makes my teeth feel like they're vibrating. The ceiling tile above me has a brown water stain in the corner, shaped like a continent nobody's discovered yet. The monitor to my right beeps out my heartbeat in neat little bursts, too calm for how fast everything inside me is moving. The doctor stands at the foot of the bed, hands in the pockets of his white coat, trying to sound like this is just another weird lab result. He talks about antigens and inheritance, percentages and likelihood, his voice smooth and practiced. He keeps saying the word incompatible like it's about blood and not about my entire life. Mom is perched on the plastic chair by the wall, purse clamped between her knees, shoulders up by her ears. She laughs at the wrong moment, this sharp, brittle sound that bounces off the curtain and falls flat. "There has to be a mix-up," she says, waving a hand like she can fan the conversation away. "You know how busy labs get. Maybe the samples got switched." The nurse by the computer stops typing for half a second. She glances at my wristband, at the screen, at the doctor. Her badge taps softly against her chest with each breath, a little plastic metronome counting out the silence. Dad doesn't say anything. His hand is still on the rail, knuckles pale, dog tags resting against the metal like they're part of the bed. He's in the jacket he wears to anything serious. Dark, worn at the wrists, faint smell of gun oil and laundry detergent clinging to it. The doctor clears his throat and edges around Mom's explanation without arguing. "We repeated the test," he says, "twice. The lab verified the chain of custody on the samples. The blood labeled as the patient's doesn't genetically line up with either of you as biological parents." He says biological parents like it's a specific job description, not the only thing I've ever believed about my life. The coin is slick in my palm now. I dig the edge into the soft part of my hand until it hurts, until pain is sharper than confusion. Dad gave me this coin when I was 10. Told me it was from a street market near his base overseas. Told me it was for luck. He said, "You've got my blood, you've got my stubborn brain, you're going to be fine," like it was a fact. Now he won't even look at me. The nurse steps closer with a clipboard. "I'm going to need a signature for imaging," she says softly. "Name and relationship to patient, please." Procedural tone, polite. The same voice she probably uses 20 times a shift. Dad takes the pen. For a second, the world narrows to the scratching of ballpoint against paper. He writes his first name without hesitation. Then the pen hovers over the next line. Relationship to patient. The clock on the wall ticks. The monitor beeps. Somewhere down the hall, a cart squeaks, and a voice calls "Clear the way" in that board-efficient ER rhythm. Dad's jaw tightens. I watch his throat move as he swallows. Then he presses the pen down and writes the word "father" like it might explode if he pushes too hard. My chest aches in a way that has nothing to do with why I came in. I'd blacked out on the basketball court, woke up to bright lights and people shouting my name, a paramedic asking me to squeeze his fingers, another one putting oxygen under my nose. Field protocol, they said. Loss of consciousness, heart check, full workup. I thought the worst thing I was going to hear tonight was something about my heart. Now they're telling me it's my blood that doesn't fit. Could this mean he was switched at birth or something? Mom asks. Her voice wobbles on switched, like she's terrified of the word, even as she says it. She doesn't look at me when she says it. She looks at the floor, at the curtain, at anything else. The doctor shakes his head slightly. "It's too early to speculate," he says. "We'll want to confirm with more genetic testing. We can arrange proper paternity and maternity panels, but that requires formal consent forms and confirmation of IDs. He glances at the board on the wall where my name is written in dry erase marker. "Right now, our priority is making sure your son is medically stable." Our son. The phrase lands crooked in my ears. The nurse scans my bracelet again, checks the barcode against the printout, following her checklist. "Name?" she asks me. I say it. It sounds thin in the air. She nods, checks my date of birth, my allergies, confirms the wristband matches. Everything lines up except the one thing that matters most right now. They start unhooking things to wheel me to imaging. The blood pressure cuff deflates with a long sigh around my arm. The IV tugs slightly in the crook of my elbow as the nurse repositions the line. The monitor switches to battery mode, its steady beeping now a little louder and more insistent in the small curtained space. Any history of fainting spells? The doctor asks as he scribbles notes. I shrug, wincing at the pull in my shoulder. Couple times, I admit. Growing up, you guys always said I was just sensitive. Mom flinches. She used that exact word at every strange fever, every sudden collapse. Sensitive. Sensitive immune system. Sensitive heart. Sensitive kid. Sensitive like a bomb. Dad finally speaks. His voice is low, rough, like it's coming from a long way off. We did what they told us, he says, but he's not talking to the doctor. He's talking to the floor. They said he'd be okay. My head turns toward him. Who's they? I ask. The question hangs there, heavier than his. He doesn't answer. Mom shoots him a look, a quick, sharp warning that I'm not supposed to see. But I do. The nurse steps on the foot pedal, and the bed shudders as the wheels unlock. Metal on metal, a small clank that runs up my spine. Cold air spills in as she pulls the curtain back, and the hallway floods my senses with bright light, disinfectant sting, distant coughs, the rolling thunder of carts and gurneys. Okay, we're headed to CT, she says. It'll be quick. Try to stay still when we get there. Her hand is light on the rail. She's done this 1,000 times. She doesn't know this is the moment my life has veered off whatever chart it was on. Dad walks beside the bed, one hand still on the rail, the other in his jacket pocket where the dog tags disappear. I keep my fingers wrapped around the coin, thumb rubbing over the worn design like I can polish answers out of it. We pass rooms with half-open doors, glimpses of other lives in crisis. A man with a neck brace, a kid crying into an oxygen mask, a woman arguing on speakerphone with someone about insurance while she clutches her own chart. I try to imagine any of them being told what I was just told. Your paperwork doesn't match your parents. There's a question mark stamped where your origin story should be. At the imaging room, they park my bed and lock the wheels again. The machine looms in front of me, big white ring, inner edge glowing softly. It looks like the mouth of something that eats you and spits out pictures. Any metal on you? The tech asks, running through his checklist. Jewelry, piercings, keys? My fingers tighten around the coin. I don't want to let go of it. I feel like if I open my hand, everything else might spill out too. Just this, I say, showing it. He hesitates, then shakes his head. You can't take that in, he says. We'll bag it and keep it in the locker. You'll get it back as soon as we're done, I promise. The nurse holds out a small plastic evidence-style bag, clear with a white strip for labeling. She writes my name on it in neat letters, adds the date and time. Chain of custody, even for a coin. It makes my skin prickle. I drop the coin in. It hits the plastic with a tiny clink, and suddenly I feel weirdly exposed, like I've just handed over the only proof that my life before this hallway actually happened. They roll me into the machine, the motor humming around my head. The tech's voice crackles over the speaker, telling me when to hold my breath, when to stay still, when it'll be over. I stare up at the inside of the ring, bright and blank, and I realize the doctor's question isn't the one that's going to keep me up tonight. Dad's is, what are you? Lying there with the machine circling my skull and my coin zipped in a bag across the room. I tell myself the only way to answer him is to start treating my whole life like a case I have to work. Lying there with the machine circling my skull and my coin zipped in a bag across the room, I tell myself the only way to answer him is to start treating my whole life like a case I have to work. The scan ends with a mechanical whir, the table sliding me back out into the cold air. The tech peels off the strap across my chest and tells me I did great, like I just passed some test I didn't study for. He hands the little plastic bag back to the nurse, and she checks my name again before pressing it into my palm. The coin is colder than I expect through the plastic. It clinks softly as I curl my fingers around it, that familiar weight steady in a way nothing else feels right now. They wheel me back to the room. The doctor talks about follow-up, about outpatient tests, about watching for symptoms, his voice moving through a checklist he could say in his sleep. He tells me my heart looks okay for now, that fainting can come from a lot of things, that we'll schedule more labs. He doesn't say anything about the word he used earlier, incompatible. At discharge, the nurse runs through her script. No driving tonight, drink water. If I pass out again, chest pain, trouble breathing, call 911. Don't try to tough it out. She hands over a stapled packet of instructions, printed in small, serious font. My name is at the top. Next to parent or guardian, there's Dad's handwriting again. The same tight letters I've seen on every field trip form and school emergency card. By the time we step out into the parking lot, it's full dark. The sodium lights buzz overhead, casting everything in that flat orange that makes cars and people look like props. The air is sharp and cold, the kind that bites inside your nose. Mom walks 3 steps ahead, keys in a white-knuckled grip. Dad walks beside me, hands back in his jacket pockets, shoulders squared like he's on patrol. The discharge papers are folded in his fist, creased in perfect thirds. He doesn't offer them to me. He never does. At home, the house smells the way it always does after a long day. Leftover coffee in the sink, laundry detergent, a faint hint of whatever Mom made for dinner and didn't eat. The kitchen clock ticks too loudly in the quiet. The fridge hums, a low, steady sound under everything. I go straight to my room. The coin comes out of the bag and into my bare hand. I toss the plastic onto my desk. It lands with a dry crackle, the date and my name still written on it in neat nurse handwriting. I lie on my back and stare at the ceiling, tracing the same crack in the paint I've stared at since middle school. Now I start cataloging, like I'm filling out an incident report. Weird medical event number 1. 3rd grade, fever that wouldn't break. They kept me overnight for observation. I remember the IV in my hand, the tape pulling at my skin, the nurse saying, "You're a tough little guy," while Dad stepped into the hallway with a doctor and came back with a new stack of papers he didn't let me see. Weird medical event number 2. 7th grade, collapsed at soccer practice. I woke up on the bench with a paramedic shining a light in my eyes, asking me my name, the date, who the president is. Dad arrived before the ambulance left, even though practice was 20 minutes from home. He signed something on a clipboard, spoke low to the medic, rode with me. Later, at the hospital, I remember him standing between me and the computer at the nurse's station when she pulled up my chart. Weird medical event. Number 3. Freshman year, mystery rash. The urgent care doctor ordered immune panels and autoimmune markers, words that sounded made up and important. We went back twice in 1 week. Every time, Dad took the printouts before I could read them. He filed them in his black folder, the one he keeps in his office cabinet with his deployment papers and our birth certificates. I roll onto my side and unlock my phone. The screen light cuts through the darkness, turning my room into a blue aquarium. The coin rests on my pillow, my fingers move back to it without thinking, thumb tracing the worn pattern like it's a worry stone. I type blood type inheritance into the search bar, then paternity blood type mismatch, then switched at birth real stories. My feed fills with charts and diagrams and articles that all say the same basic thing. If both parents are one blood type, and the kid is something genetically impossible, somebody's lying or something went very wrong. Every few minutes, I stop and take a breath, trying to do what they taught us in the school safety seminar. In through the nose, out through the mouth, grounding. Assess the scene, check yourself, check others. I'm not bleeding, I'm not dying, but my brain keeps circling the same question like a siren. What are you? The house settles around me, pipes ticking, wind brushing against the windows, the HVAC kicking on with a low whoosh through the vent above my bed. I listen for footsteps in the hall, for my parents' voices. Nothing. The articles blur together. Words like genetic marker, inheritance pattern, non-paternity event start to feel less like science and more like accusations pointed right at our front door. At some point, I must drift, because the next thing I know, there's a sliver of gray light at the edges of my blinds, and my phone is heavy on my chest. The coin is still in my hand. Its ridges have left little half-moon indents in my palm. In the bathroom, the mirror shows the same face I've always had. Same eyes everyone says look like Dad's. Same crooked nose I got from Mom's side of the family, if you believe every relative who's ever pinched my cheek at a reunion. I splash cold water on my face until my skin tingles. The faucet squeaks when I shut it off. I grab my toothbrush and stare at my reflection like it's going to glitch and show someone else underneath. Downstairs, the smell of coffee hits first, dark and strong. The TV murmurs from the living room, some morning show host laughing a little too loudly about something that doesn't matter. The kitchen light is on, bright against the still early sky outside. Dad sits at the table with the paper spread in front of him, mug in hand. He looks up when he hears my footsteps, eyes flicking over me like he's doing a quick assessment. Breathing, check. Walking, check. Still his kid, pending. Mom is at the counter, pouring cereal into a bowl with more force than necessary. The clink of flakes against ceramic is a little too sharp. Her phone lies face down beside the coffee maker, screen buzzing every so often against the laminate. "Hey champ," Dad says, like last night was a bad dream. "Sleep okay?" "Sure," I say. My voice sounds flat even to me. I pour myself some cereal, milk sloshing dangerously close to the edge of the bowl because my hand won't stop shaking. We eat in this weird, almost normal quiet for a few minutes. The only sounds are the spoon against my teeth, the fridge humming, the tick-tick of the clock over the doorway. I wait for one of them to bring it up. The ER, the tests, the doctor's words. They don't. So we talked to the doctor after they finished, Mom says finally, still not turning around. He thinks it was probably just dehydration. You know how you never drink enough water during practice? That's not what he was talking about, I say. My spoon rests in the bowl, sinking into the soggy flakes. The coin is in my pocket, a small, dense weight against my thigh. I press my leg against the chair just to feel it. Dad's eyes sharpen. Watch your tone, he says, but it comes out more tired than angry. I look between them. Dehydration doesn't make a nurse flinch when you say, "What are you?" I say. Dehydration doesn't make a doctor tell you your blood doesn't match your parents'. Mom's hand jerks. Coffee sloshes over the side of her mug onto the counter, a dark puddle spreading fast. She fumbles for a paper towel, knocking the spoon onto the floor with a sharp clatter. "You're being dramatic," she snaps, voice too high. "These tests aren't perfect. Labs make mistakes all the time. They were busy, it was late, you scared them passing out like that." "The lab verified the chain of custody," I cut in. I hear the phrase in the doctor's voice. He said it like it mattered, like it closed a door. "They said that in the room. You were there." Dad sets his mug down a little too hard. Porcelain clicks against wood. He looks at me the way he looks at the TV when the news shows a rooftop in a war zone, scanning for threats you can't see at first glance. "It's complicated," he says. "Medicine is complicated. Genetics is complicated. You don't know everything just because you can Google a few articles." My chest tightens. "This isn't about Google," I say. "This is about math. The doctor said a mismatch like that is statistically impossible." Those were his exact words. I meet his eyes and don't look away. That means someone is lying or something is screwed up way bigger than dehydration. The silence that follows feels thick, like the air right before a storm hits. Mom is still dabbing at the counter, even though the spill is already soaked into the towel. Her hand shakes so hard the paper rustles. Dad's face changes. Something hard slides into place behind his eyes. He leans forward, forearms on the table, fingers steepled like he's about to brief a room. "Some questions," he says, voice low and sharp enough to cut. "Don't need answers." The words hit harder than anything the doctor said, because in that second I hear it. The rhythm of something practiced, not spontaneous. And I realize this isn't confusion at all. It's a secret they've rehearsed not to tell. It's a secret they've rehearsed not to tell. The words echo in my head long after I leave the kitchen. They're still talking in low voices when I close my bedroom door, their murmurs thin through the drywall like a radio station just out of range. I sit on the edge of my bed, coin in my hand, phone in the other. The metal is warm from my pocket, the ridges pressing faint little crescents into my skin. As I turn it over and over, on the screen, my search bar waits, blinking like a cursor on an incident report. Home DNA test. Paternity kit. How accurate are consumer DNA tests? Each result feels like a hand on my shoulder, nudging me forward and warning me away at the same time. Some sites scream disclaimers in bold letters. Not for legal use. Consult an attorney. May reveal unexpected family relationships. I already have the unexpected relationship part. I just want proof that I'm not losing my mind. I scroll until I find a kit that looks generic enough not to trip anyone's radar. No bright ancestry ads. No happy stock photo families. Just a plain box in the picture with a barcode and the word genetic on it. I add it to my cart. The total pops up. My thumb hovers over the button that says place order. The coin bites my palm. I press down on the screen. When the confirmation email pings, the time at the top might as well say middle of the night and bad decisions. I turn my phone face down on the bed and lie back, staring at the ceiling. The vent hums softly above me. I count the beats of its fan like they're the ticks of a countdown I can't see yet. The kit arrives 3 days later in a brown box with our address printed cleanly on the label. Mom drops it on the hall table with the rest of the mail, not even glancing at the return address. She's on the phone with my aunt, complaining about traffic. Her voice curls around words like commute and gas prices, not DNA. I wait until she's in the shower and Dad's out in the garage. The house feels hollow, just the fridge buzzing and the faint thump of water pipes in the walls. I take the box to my room and close the door carefully, easing the latch so it doesn't click. The cardboard gives with a dry rip as I open it. Inside, everything is clinical and calm. 2 small envelopes, clear collection sleeves, instruction pamphlet with diagrams. The coin sits on my desk, dead center, as I lay it all out around it. It looks like the only thing in the room that's not pretending to be neutral. The instructions suggest cheek swabs, but there's a section about hair samples. Roots attached, minimum count, how to seal them. I read every line twice, like a checklist before a drill. I pluck a hair from my own head, quick and sharp. My scalp stings, and my eyes water. I watch the tiny root at the end, pale against my fingertip, before I slide it into the first sleeve. The plastic crackles as I press it shut. For Dad, I need something he won't notice. I slip into the hallway and pad toward the bathroom, floorboards creaking in the same places they always do. The light above the mirror buzzes when I flick it on. Steam curls faintly from the shower Dad took half an hour ago. The scent of his soap lingers, clean and sharp. His razor sits on the sink, metal handle resting in a thin puddle. I pick it up carefully, turning it toward the light. There, caught between the blades, a few short dark hairs. My hands shake as I tap them onto a folded tissue, using the edge of my nail to nudge them free. Tiny lines of him. I feel wrong taking them. I do it anyway. Back in my room, I slide them into the second sleeve. Dad's hair, my hair. 2 samples sealed with a soft plastic sigh. On the form, I print our names. Father, son. Then I hit the section for family history and health background. Boxes wait for neat answers. Mother's ethnicity, father's ethnicity. Known hereditary conditions. My pen hovers. My brain feeds me the usual shorthand. Irish, Italian, heart trouble on mom's side, good stock from dad's. All the stories they've told me at holidays and in waiting rooms. My stomach knots. I put the pen down. I pick it back up and check unknown for half of them. It feels more honest than repeating a lie I can't verify anymore. When I'm done, I sign where it asks for consent and understanding. I date it. I double-check every line like I'm making sure a report will hold up under cross-examination. I slide everything into the return envelope, peel off the adhesive strip, and press it closed slowly, feeling the seal catch. For a second, I consider writing my own chain of custody notes on it. Evidence bag 1, hair samples, collected by me, date, time. Instead, I write only my name in the space they give me. I tuck the envelope under my hoodie and walk it down to the mailbox myself. The metal door squeals when I pull it open. I drop the envelope in. It lands with a dull thunk against other mail, small and heavy and irreversible. Weeks stretch out like someone's paused my life in all the wrong places. School, practice, dinner, everything continues in this weird, hollow normal. I go to class, take notes, pretend to care about photosynthesis and algebra. During lunch, I check my email. During passing period, I check my email. Before bed, under the blanket with the coin pressed against my thumb, I check my email. Dad keeps acting like nothing is wrong. He drives me to practice, asks about drills, complains about his boss, but sometimes I catch him watching me in the rearview mirror like he's scanning for rooftop snipers again. Like the danger might be me. Mom oscillates between overbearing and distracted. She reminds me to drink water, to eat more greens, to take my vitamins. Then she zones out staring at the TV when the news shows hospitals or labs, her hand tightening around the remote until her knuckles blanch. The coin goes everywhere with me now. Pocket, palm, under my pillow, on my desk, while I do homework. I find myself rubbing it whenever a notification buzzes, like I'm trying to wake some answer in the metal. One afternoon, I come home to an empty house. Garage door is closed, no cars in the driveway. The air inside is still. Sunlight slants through the blinds, dust motes drifting in quiet, slow motion. I sort through the mail like I have a reason to be there. Junk ads, a bill, a pre-approved credit offer in Dad's name, no lab logo. I step outside with the stack anyway, mostly for the excuse to be by the box again. The neighborhood is soft with distant lawnmowers and a dog barking 3 houses down. The metal of the mailbox door is warm under my fingers. My phone buzzes in my pocket as I flip it shut. I juggle the mail in one hand, dig out the phone with the other, thumb already swiping without conscious thought. One new email, subject line, your DNA results are ready. The coin is between my fingers before I even realize I've reached for it. I roll it back and forth, watching the sun flash along its edge as I tap the notification. The link opens to a login screen. My heart thumps so hard I can feel it in my throat. I punch in my password, hands clumsy. The little loading circle spins and spins, like it's deciding whether to ruin my day or not. The results page resolves into colored bars and percentages. I scroll past the ancestry fluff, the pie charts, the fun traits section like eye color and tongue rolling. I'm not here for fun. I'm here for the part that touches the word father. There it is, paternity likelihood, 0% match to listed paternal sample. 0, not low, not ambiguous. 0. Under that, a note. No close genetic relationship detected between maternal reference and subject. The sound that escapes me is small and ugly, something between a laugh and a choking noise. My knees go weak, and I sit hard on the curb, mail spilling onto the driveway. The coin is suddenly too heavy in my hand. I close my eyes and see numbers where my parents' faces should be. Somewhere down the street, a truck rattles past. A kid yells, "Heads up," and a basketball thumps against pavement. The world keeps going like nothing just came unglued. I forward the report to myself, twice, just in case. Then I take screenshots, backups of backups. If this is going to be evidence, I'm not losing it to a server glitch. When my parents come home, I'm waiting in the living room. The TV is off. The coin sits on the coffee table next to a neat stack of printed pages, its dull brass catching the late afternoon light like it's part of the display. Dad steps in first, kicking off his shoes. He pauses when he sees me. Mom comes in behind him, grocery bags in hand. "What's going on?" she asks, eyes flicking from my face to the papers. I pick up the top sheet. The lab's logo stares back at me. Beneath it, my name, subject. "I ran a DNA test," I say. My voice doesn't sound like mine. It sounds like a recording played back through bad speakers. Mom's hands loosen around the bag handles. A box of pasta slips and hits the floor with a dull cardboard thud. Dad doesn't move. I read the numbers out loud. 0%. No close relationship. The specific phrase non-biological that feels like a stamp across my forehead. Each term hangs in the air like a verdict. Mom sways. For a second, I think she's going to faint. She grabs the back of the armchair instead, knuckles white, and makes this broken sound I've never heard from her before. Dad's jaw flexes. He doesn't reach for the papers. He doesn't even look down at them. "You know these mail order tests aren't perfect," he says finally, voice flat. "You really think some lab that doesn't even know you can tell you more about who you are than we can?" I set the pages back down beside the coin. The edge of the top sheet lines up perfectly with the edge of the table. "I think they can tell me who I'm not," I say. Mom covers her mouth with her hand, eyes shining. "Please," she whispers. "Please, can we not do this like this?" "There isn't another way to do this," I say. I look at Dad. "I asked you a question. You told me some questions don't need answers. Well, I have one now. It says you're not my biological parents. So what am I?" For a heartbeat, I see something in his face crack. Not much, just the smallest flinch. Then it's gone. He sits down slowly, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tight his knuckles look carved from stone. He stares at me like I'm on the other side of an interrogation table. And his jaw just locks like I'm an interrogator he refuses to break for. And his jaw just locks like I'm an interrogator he refuses to break for. If this were one of his war documentaries, this would be the part where the interrogator changes tactics. No more yelling, just facts, just paper. So I go looking for paper. I don't tell them where I'm going. I grab my hoodie, slip the coin into my pocket, and walk out the front door like I'm just going to clear my head. The air outside is cool and thin, almost metallic on my tongue. My phone feels light in my hand compared to the weight in my chest. The hospital where I was born isn't far. 15 minutes by bus, 10 if the lights cooperate. I take the longer route on purpose. Time to rehearse a script in my head. I picture forms, ID checks, a clerk behind glass. Procedure, every system has one. The automatic doors hiss open when I step inside, releasing that familiar mix of antiseptic, old coffee, and warmed-over cafeteria food. Someone pushes a wheelchair past me, rubber wheels squeaking against the tile. A baby cries somewhere up ahead, high and thin, cutting through the low murmur of voices and beeping monitors. Medical records is down a quiet hallway off the main lobby. The sign is small, almost apologetic, like they'd rather you didn't find it. I follow it anyway. The glass window is smudged at eye level, fingerprints in overlapping arcs. Behind it, a woman in her 50s sits at a desk, glasses sliding down her nose as she types. Her name tag catches the light when she looks up. "Can I help you?" she asks. The coin is in my fist, the edge digging into my palm, grounding me. "I need copies of my birth records," I say. I was born here. She nods like she's heard the request 1,000 times. Okay, we can do that. I'll need your ID, and you'll have to fill out an authorization form, release of information. She slides a clipboard through the slot at the bottom of the glass. The pen attached to it scratches faintly as I pull it toward me. The form is dense with boxes and lines: patient name, date of birth, address, records requested, purpose of request. Purpose of request. The options are all neat and harmless: continuing care, personal use, insurance, legal. My reason feels bigger and uglier than any of those, but I check personal use and legal anyway, just in case. I hand over my driver's license. She studies it, eyes flicking between the card and my face, then turns to her computer. Keys clack softly. The screen's reflection flickers in her glasses. Okay, she murmurs. Let's see. She freezes. It's small, just a tiny pause, the kind you'd miss if you weren't watching for it. But I am. Her eyes widen a fraction. The color drains from her face, leaving her skin a little too pale under the fluorescent lights. For a second, she really does look like she's seen a ghost. What? I ask. My voice comes out tighter than I mean it to. Is there a problem? No, it's just... She blinks hard, forcing her features back into something resembling neutral. Your file is... It looks like it's marked as restricted. The word doesn't belong here. It belongs in briefing rooms and secure servers, not in whatever database holds baby footprints and APGAR scores. Restricted how, I say. She glances over her shoulder, then leans slightly closer to the glass. Some records are placed under special access protocols, she says carefully. It's not something I can override from here. Special protocols. The phrase tastes like metal in my mouth. Does that happen a lot with birth records? Her lips press into a thin line. I'm not supposed to discuss internal procedures, she says. She reaches for the phone on her desk. But I can get my supervisor, if you'll just wait a moment. She dials a short extension, voice low and clipped as she explains. I catch my name, my date of birth, the word flagged. The coin shifts in my hand, slick against my skin. Minutes stretch. The wall clock ticks steadily, each second a neat little reminder that someone, somewhere, decided I was not standard issue. A man in a suit finally appears at the door behind her, tie a little too tight, smile a little too practiced. He steps up to the glass, nudging the clerk gently aside. Good afternoon, he says. Sorry for the delay. I'm Mr. Keller. I oversee health information management. Health information, not my information. The distinction feels deliberate. I understand you're requesting your birth records, he continues. We can certainly provide a basic summary, date, time, attending physician, the usual. I want the whole file, I say, everything you have on me. His smile shrinks by a millimeter. Some portions of older records are archived under special protocols, he says, echoing the clerk's phrase. For research compliance and privacy reasons. It's not that we're hiding anything, it's just, there are guidelines. Privacy for who, I ask. I'm the patient. He doesn't answer that. Instead, he slides a thin folder through the slot. Inside is a photocopy, my name, birth date, weight, length, a doctor's signature scribbled across the bottom. It's clean, too clean, like someone scrubbed it with bleach. I flip through. No notes, no complications, no mention of extra tests or special protocols, or why my parents spent years calling me sensitive like it was code. I look up. Through the glass, I can see Keller's desk in the office behind him. On it, a thicker file sits open. Just out of reach, papers staggered. A corner of one page sticks out from under a manila divider. Red ink screams across it in block letters, cut off mid-word. Human subjects, confidential. The world sharpens around that phrase. Clerk, suit, glass, everything else blurs at the edges. What's that? I ask, nodding toward it. He follows my gaze, then casually closes the folder. The red stamp disappears. That's not part of your chart, he says smoothly. Just an internal form. Like I said, some documents are archived differently due to research regulations. It's nothing you need to worry about. My fingers tighten around the photocopy. The paper crinkles. Do my parents have access to the full file? I ask. He tilts his head. Even parental access is limited on certain legacy research records, he says. Look, if you have concerns, you're welcome to submit a written request to our compliance office. There's a process. There's always a process. Layers and layers of it, like armor. I'll do that, I say. My voice is steady, even though my heart is slamming against my ribs. Can I get something in writing that says my file is restricted? He hesitates. That tiny pause again. Then he scribbles a note on the hospital letterhead and slides it to me. Patient record subject to special access protocols, per policy. Signed, Health Information Management. I fold the paper while it's still warm from the pen. The coin in my pocket feels like it's gaining mass by the second. On the bus ride home, I hold the envelope with the generic birth summary in one hand and the folded note in the other. Human subjects, my brain keeps repeating. Not patients, subjects. The house is quiet when I walk in. The sun has dropped low, turning the living room a dim orange. I can hear the faint rattle of the dryer downstairs, the hum of the water heater kicking on. I don't go to my room. My feet take me to the basement door instead. The stairs creak under my weight. Familiar groans in the wood. The air down there is cooler, with a faint smell of dust and cardboard. The single bulb overhead casts a small, hard circle of light, leaving the corners in shadow. Against the far wall, under a shelf of paint cans and old tools, sits Dad's metal box. Gunmetal gray, edges dented, latch solid. He's always called it his deployment junk. Nothing in there for kids. Up close, I can see faint scratches near the lock, like it's been opened and closed more times than he admits. The padlock is small and sturdy, brass dulled with age. I kneel in front of it, the concrete cold seeping through my jeans. The coin comes out of my pocket without me thinking, resting in my palm like it belongs here. I stare at it, then at the lock. The key to this box hangs on the same chain as his dog tags. I felt it 1,000 times when he hugged me, the sharp press of metal against my chest, security clearance around his neck, access if you know what you're looking at. Now I know. Upstairs, a door closes. Footsteps cross the kitchen overhead, muffled thuds through layers of wood and insulation. The dryer buzzes, an insistent nasal alarm. My heart hammers. I close my fingers around the coin and exhale slowly, like they taught us in those school safety drills. Assess the scene, identify the exits, decide if you're going in. In my mind, I see Dad's dog tags hanging on the hook by the back door, metal glinting under the hallway light. The key I need is already in this house, and as I sit there in the dim basement, staring at the locked box everyone pretends is full of harmless memories, I realize the next thing I pick up might not just be a key. It might be the first real piece of evidence about what I actually am. I sit up in bed before the alarm goes off, staring into the dark, the coin already in my hand. The house is quiet in that way. It only is before dawn. No TV, no traffic, just the fridge humming downstairs and the faint tick of the thermostat on the hallway wall. I wait. At 5 a.m., right on schedule, the pipes in the bathroom rattle. Dad's shower. Water hits the tile in a steady hiss, then shuts off. The floorboard outside my room creaks as he passes. The smell of his aftershave drifts in under my door, sharp and familiar. I hear the front closet open, the jingle of his dog tags as he pulls on his jacket. Keys clack into the ceramic bowl on the entry table. Laces tighten. The deadbolt turns with a low, heavy click, and the front door opens just enough to let in a blade of cold air. Back in an hour, he calls softly toward the hallway, the same line he's used my whole life. The door shuts. The lock settles. His footsteps fade down the porch and onto the sidewalk, then into nothing. I wait 30 seconds, then I swing my legs out of bed. The coin's edge bites my palm when I stand. I move on bare feet, careful to step over the spots I know creak. The hall is dim, the only light a faint gray leaking under the curtains in the living room. The dog tags hang on the hook by the door. Metal shapes against the shadowed wall. 2 stamped plates. 1 small brass key. Up close, the key looks ordinary, just another jagged piece of metal, but I can feel the weight of everything it might open. I take the chain down and slide it into my pocket with the coin. The metal clinks softly, a tiny radio beep of alarm I ignore. In the kitchen, the coffee maker's clock glows in green numbers. Too early for Mom, too early for anyone to ask where I'm going. The basement door groans when I open it, so I lift a little as I pull, easing the hinge. Cool air rolls up, smelling like dust, concrete, and the faint chemical tang of old paint. The bulb at the bottom responds on the second pull of the string, flicking on with a reluctant buzz. Light spills over the stairs, leaving the corners in shadow. The metal box waits under the shelves where I left it, squat and solid. Its surface is cold when I drag it into the center of the light. The padlock swings against the latch, heavy and deliberate. I sit cross-legged on the concrete in front of it, heart pounding hard enough that I can feel it in my throat. The dog tags slip from my pocket into my hand. I run my thumb over the raised letters of his name, his blood type, his social security number, all the ways the military has of reducing a person to data. Then I slide the small brass key into the lock. For a second, it doesn't turn. Then it gives with a tiny metallic click that feels louder than it should. The shackle pops open. I catch it before it can clang against the box, lowering it gently. My fingers leave damp prints on the metal. I flip the latch and lift the lid. I expect to see medals, photos of dusty bases and smiling soldiers, maybe letters. Instead, the smell of paper and old toner rushes out. Inside, everything is arranged with the same precision as his tools on the workbench. Neat stacks, corners aligned. On top is a folder with my name printed in block letters. Under that, a paperclip holds a small photo. I pick it up, a baby in a plastic hospital bassinet, swaddled tight in a patterned blanket. A shock of dark hair sticking up. Clear tubing snakes under the edge of the blanket, disappearing out of frame. There's tape on one tiny wrist. The baby's eyes are squeezed shut, mouth open in a frozen cry. The name on the label beneath the picture isn't mine. It just says Subject 7, male, followed by a date, my birthday. My stomach twists. I set the photo down carefully and pull out the first form. The hospital's logo sits in the corner, but there's another logo next to it. Sleek, corporate, a stylized helix with the words Arcus Medical Research Group beneath. I've never heard of it. The title of the document is in bold. Neonatal Immune Modulation Protocol, Phase 2 Trial. The language is dense, columns of text and numbered sections. Study objectives. Inclusion criteria. Exclusion criteria. Terms jump out at me through the haze. Experimental therapy. High-risk cohort. Off-label biologic agents. Long-term monitoring recommended. Halfway down the page, there's a line for parent or legal guardian. 2 signatures sit side by side at the bottom. Mom's is messy, the same looping scrawl she uses on field trip permission slips and checks. Dad's is tight and precise, every letter contained, like the signatures he puts on maintenance logs and incident reports. Above them, in smaller print, the consent statement. I, the undersigned, understand that my child will be enrolled as a research subject in the above protocol. I acknowledge the potential risks, including but not limited to serious adverse events and mortality. I agree to comply with all study procedures and follow-up visits as required by the sponsor. My hand shakes so hard the paper rustles. They didn't just agree to treatment, they signed me into a program. I flip to the next page. It's an intake form. In the top corner, there's a stapled photo. A younger version of my dad stares out, standing beside a hospital bed, holding me in his arms. He looks the same and not the same, less gray in his hair, fewer lines around his eyes, but the same set to his jaw. He's wearing a visitor badge on his shirt. His dog tags glint at his collar. Across the bottom of the photo, a date stamp and a line of text in black. A faint red line has been added later, underlining it. Subject 7, admission day. There's no name field, no first name, no last name, just the number. The form beneath it lists measurements, weight, length, APGAR scores, then more clinical notes. Immune markers abnormal, candidate for protocol enrollment, parents briefed on risks, security clearance level for research area, restricted. The word security looks wrong on a baby form. I flip through more pages. Progress notes, lab results with values circled in red, visit logs with neat timestamps. Day 3, infusion 1 administered. Day 7, mild reaction resolved. 3-month follow-up, parents report no serious adverse events. Continued monitoring advised. The sponsor's name appears again and again, Arcos. Sometimes just the sponsor, sometimes the company. At the back of the stack, I find a document stamped termination summary in thick black letters. I read faster now, heart in my throat. Due to incidents of severe adverse events and mortality in trial cohort, protocol enrollment halted effective immediately. All remaining subjects to be followed as part of long-term observational program. Parents advised to maintain regular pediatric evaluation. No direct communication regarding trial cessation to be made without sponsor approval. Mortality, trial cohort, remaining subjects. The basement tilts a little. I brace a hand on the floor, concrete cold and gritty under my fingers. They knew other babies in this program died. They knew the trial was stopped. And they brought me home and called what happened after that bad luck and sensitivity. At the very bottom of the bulk under the hospital forms, there's a thinner folder with a different header. Program Aegis, participant tracking. The pages inside are mostly redacted, thick black bars erasing names and addresses, but numbers are visible down the left side. Subject 1, Subject 2, Subject 3, Subject 7, next to each, partial notes, location, state code, status, living, deceased, lost to follow up. Some of the status fields are blank. Some say deceased in small, emotionless letters. Next to Subject 7, the word living is underlined. A date is written in the margin in Dad's handwriting. 3 years ago, he's still updating this. My mind jumps back to every weird appointment, every just-in-case checkup, every time he insisted on going with me to the hospital, even when I was old enough to drive myself. He's not just a dad who worries. He's a dad who's been watching a program run in real time. I reach for my phone with hands that don't feel like they belong to me. The screen flares blue in the dim basement. I start taking pictures. Every page, every signature, every stamp. Click, 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 the shutter sound like a tiny hammer. I back the photos up to the cloud, then to a hidden folder, then email a copy to an address I use for junk, fingers moving on autopilot. Chain of custody, I think. If they try to make this disappear, I need more than one copy. Upstairs, the front door opens. A rush of cool air, the muffled thud of shoes on the mat. Dad's footsteps cross the entryway, the familiar creak in the second floorboard. The dog tags are still in my pocket. The box is still open. The pages are spread around me like a crime scene. The last document in my hand is a letter from Arcos to my parents, printed on smooth, heavy paper. Thank you for your continued participation in our neonatal immune modulation program. Your child's progress provides invaluable data for the advancement of treatment options worldwide. My name is nowhere in it, just my subject number. I stare at that line until the letters blur, and for the first time, I understand that to the people who wrote this, I was never a son. I was a data point. The basement floor vibrates faintly as Dad moves toward the kitchen overhead. A cabinet door opens, then closes. The faucet runs. I stand, knees stiff, heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my teeth, and look at the open box, the scattered papers, the key in my hand, the coin in my other. I have my first real proof of what they did. Now I have to decide whether I'm going to confront him like a son with hurt feelings, or like the only surviving subject in a shutdown program who finally has evidence to lay on the table, or like the only surviving subject in a shutdown program who finally has evidence to lay on the table. That thought follows me back upstairs, into the shower, into school, into the quiet moments when I'm supposed to be doing anything else. I sit in class with my notebook open and the program Aegis list burned onto the back of my eyelids. Subject numbers, status, deceased, living, lost to follow up. Beside some of the entries, there are partial names. Most of them are blacked out in thick marker, but whoever did the redacting wasn't perfect. On Subject 3, the last name still peeks out. A few letters at the end, enough to recognize a pattern. On Subject 5, there are initials next to a town. On Subject 2, the year of birth, same as mine, same hospital code in the margin. At home, I shut my bedroom door, set the coin on my keyboard, and open my laptop. The fan whirs to life, a low, steady rush under my fingers. I start with what I have, a partial last name, the year, our city, obituary. The search results are a long list of strangers at first, page after page of names and dates that don't fit. Photos of grandparents, veterans, people who lived long enough to have grandkids and hobbies. Then one link hits me in the gut. The headline is short. In loving memory of Emma R. She's 2 in the picture, dark curls, big eyes, a tiny hospital bracelet around her wrist. The obituary is careful. She passed away peacefully from complications, it says. Donations in her memory can be made to the Pediatric Immune Research Fund at the same hospital where I was born. At the bottom, there is a contact name for donations. M. Alvarez. I click the link for the fund. The page loads with a photo of a black tie fundraising gala. People in suits and gowns smile at the camera, champagne glasses in hand. In the background, on a banner behind them, is a logo, not Arcos. Different name, new design, but the helix shape is the same, just stylized, like they put the old logo in a suit too. I scroll faster, scanning for the fine print. Down at the bottom it says, Pediatric Immunology Research Initiative, formerly Arcos Medical Research Group. Formerly. So they didn't die when the program did. They just changed clothes. My pulse thuds in my ears. I copy the contact email and paste it into a new message window. The cursor blinks in the to field, waiting. I type slowly, choosing every word like it might be used in court someday. I say I'm researching neonatal immune trials from the year I was born. I say I believe I was a participant. I say I'm looking to connect with anyone who worked on the pediatric ward back then. I don't mention Program Aegis. I don't mention Subject 7. Not yet. I hover over send, the coin under my right hand, cool against my skin. Then I click. The whoosh of the outgoing email is soft. I sit there staring at the screen, resisting the urge to refresh every 5 seconds. The reply comes that evening. I see the notification while I'm pretending to do homework at the dining table, textbooks spread out like I'm actually focused on them. The subject line is simple, re-inquiry. The message is from a Gmail account, not a hospital address. This is Mrs. Alvarez, it says. I was a pediatric nurse at that hospital for 30 years. I don't discuss details over email, but I remember those trials. If you want to talk, we can meet in public. She suggests a diner near the hospital, mentions the time she usually has coffee. There's a line at the end. Please, if you are who I think you are, bring something with your subject number. My throat feels dry. I type back yes before I can talk myself out of it. The diner is the kind of place that hasn't changed in decades. Chrome trim, red vinyl booths, laminated menus under the glass. The air smells like coffee, bacon grease, and syrup. The bell over the door jingles when I walk in. The floor is sticky in places. A jukebox in the corner plays something old and too loud. I pick a booth where I can see the entrance and the parking lot. Emergency coordination, I think, because it's easier than thinking about the word subject. Identify exits, watch line, potential witnesses. The coin sits on the table in front of me, half hidden under my hand. In my backpack, the Subject 7 intake form and the baby photo are clipped together in a sleeve. They feel heavier than my textbooks. A woman comes in 5 minutes later, moving a little slower than the rest of the lunchtime rush. Gray hair pulled back, hospital ID still clipped to her old lanyard even though she's in a cardigan and sensible shoes. She scans the room, eyes landing on me, not on my backpack, on the coin under my fingers. Then she nods like that confirms something. Are you? She starts when she reaches the table. Her voice is softer than I expected. She swallows. Are you the one who emailed? Yes, I say, my throat is tight. I stop before I say my name. Instead, I reach for my bag and slide the plastic sleeve across the table. The vinyl seat squeaks under her as she sits. Her hands tremble when she picks up the form. She looks at the baby photo first. Her lips part slightly, her eyes go shiny. Oh, she whispers. God. Her fingers trace the edge of the date stamp. Then she looks at the line at the bottom. Subject 7. Her eyes close for a second. When she opens them, she looks older. You look like him, she says. Your father, he used to stand on the other side of the glass and stare like he could will the monitors to stay green. The waitress comes by with coffee. The mug clinks gently onto the table, dark liquid sloshing. I order something just to make her go away, voice on autopilot. Do you remember the program? I ask. The trial? She lets out a slow breath, wrapping both hands around her mug. The ceramic is chipped at the rim. Her knuckles are pale. I remember more than I'm supposed to, she says. We were told not to keep notes, not to ask questions, just follow orders, extra blood work, extra scans, extra everything. Her eyes go distant. There were babies with whole teams attached to them, specialists, researchers, people in suits who never wore hospital badges. They had security outside some of the rooms. Security? I echo. She nods. Men with earpieces, not our usual guards. We were told it was because of some pharmaceutical theft issue, but I've worked through bomb threats and hurricane alerts. This was different. The diner's noise swells around us, silverware clinking, a blender whirring, someone laughing too loud at the counter. It all feels far away. Do you remember him? I ask. I tap the form. Subject 7? She stares at the page again, then at my face. You were one of the quieter ones, she says. Fevers, collapses, strange lab numbers, but you always bounced back. Some of the others? Her voice cracks. She reaches across the table before I can react and folds my fingers around the coin. The metal warms quickly between our hands. Your father used to hold that, she says quietly. In the hallway, just like that. Like it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. I swallow hard. He enrolled me, I say. They both did. She doesn't argue. She doesn't rush to defend them. Her gaze drops back to the paperwork spread between us. They signed all the parents up with the same script, she murmurs. Hope and fear. Your baby is sick. Your baby might get sick. This could save them. This could help everyone. What happened, I ask, to the program? Her eyes flick to the door like she's checking who might be listening. She leans in, voice barely above the clatter of dishes. There were events, she says. That's what they called them in the meetings. Not deaths, not crashes, events. A baby coding out of nowhere, another catching something their immune system couldn't handle after a routine procedure, things that didn't fit. The word event sticks in my throat like a bone. Families ask questions, she goes on. A couple of them threaten lawyers, and then suddenly it was over. Officially, the study was completed. Unofficially, it was shut down. We were told never to use the trial name again. Arcos, I say. She nods. Arcos. They rebranded a year later. New name, same people, same fancy conferences. The hospital kept working with them. Money like that doesn't just go away. Do you know what they call themselves now? I ask. She gives a humorless little laugh. You already saw it, didn't you, on the gala page? Pediatric Immunology Research Initiative. Sounds noble enough to put on a tote bag. A waitress drops a plate at the next booth. The fork on it rattles. Who ran it? I ask. The program. Her jaw tightens. These days he goes by Dr. Lang, she says. Back then it was the principal investigator or just doctor. He liked to remind us of that part. The name means nothing to me at first. Just another syllable. Then she adds, almost under her breath. He's on the state medical board now, sits in judgment over other doctors, decides who keeps their license, who loses theirs. The air in the diner feels thinner. My chest pulls tight. So the man who turned babies into subject numbers, I say slowly, gets to decide who's fit to practice medicine. Mrs. Alvarez meets my eyes over the rim of her mug. Her hand is still on mine, coin caught between our palms. That's the thing about ghosts, she says softly. The people who made them usually end up in positions where nobody wants to believe they exist. The people who made them usually end up in positions where nobody wants to believe they exist. Mrs. Alvarez's words ride home with me, buzzing in my ears louder than the traffic. By the time I'm back in my room, the coin is hot from how hard I've been gripping it. If nobody wants to believe they exist, then I need proof that does not care what anyone wants. I open my laptop. The fan kicks on, a steady low rush under the click of keys. The glow of the screen turns my room into a dim blue cave. I draft an email first. Something simple on the surface. To the rebranded company's patient relations address listed at the bottom of the gala page. I use every formal phrase I can steal from sample letters online. Pursuant to my rights under federal and state health privacy laws, I am requesting copies of all records related to my participation in any neonatal clinical trials, including but not limited to consent forms, protocols, adverse event reports, and internal correspondence referencing my subject number. I attach a scanned copy of my ID. I add my date of birth, the hospital, the year. I don't mention what I already have. Let them decide how honest they want to be. I CC the hospital's records department, the compliance office email listed on Keller's card, and my own burner account. Then I hover over send, the coin under my thumb on the spacebar. Click. The whoosh of the outgoing message feels like the first shot in a war I didn't start. For 2 days, all I get are automated replies. We have received your request. We will respond within the legally required time frame. In the meantime, life pretends to go on. School bells, homework, the microwave beeping downstairs, mom asking if I want seconds. On the second night, I'm half asleep, phone face down on my nightstand, when it buzzes with that specific chime I've set for new mail. I roll over, fumbling for it, eyes squinting against the screen light. The subject line is long and carefully worded. Response to your recent inquiry. Regarding historical clinical data. The sender isn't Patient Relations, it's a law firm with a name that sounds like a bank. I sit up against the headboard, coin already in my hand. The email is a wall of dense paragraphs, no line breaks, no warmth. They acknowledge my message. They remind me that my parents entered into confidential clinical agreements for emergent life-saving care. They suggest I may be misinterpreting the scope of experimental consent. There's a sentence that makes my skin crawl. We must advise you that dissemination of proprietary protocol materials or speculative statements to third parties may constitute defamation or breach of contract. My thumb presses into the coin so hard my hand aches. They say the data collected on me was de-identified and therefore doesn't fall under the same disclosure rules. They say they share my concern for patient welfare. They say if I have questions, I should direct them to counsel, not to current or former employees. There's a PS. We understand that a retired nurse, Emser Alvarez, has recently been in contact with individuals seeking information about historical trials. We remind all parties that disclosure of proprietary research methods is prohibited. The air in my room suddenly feels thin. They're not just watching me, they're already tracing the edges of anyone who might help. I forward the email to my burner, then to another address I set up for the sole purpose of this. Backups of backups. Chain of custody. I save it as a PDF. I print it, the old inkjet in the corner coughing each line onto paper with little mechanical sighs. In the morning, I put the printed email on the kitchen table next to the salt shaker and sit there, waiting. The coin rests on top of the pages, pinning them down like a paperweight. Dad comes in, still in his running clothes, sweat cooling on his neck. The smell of cold air and damp fabric clings to him. He reaches for the coffee pot, then stops when he sees the papers. "What's this?" he asks. "You tell me," I say. "Looks like your friends finally wrote back." He picks up the top page. His eyes track the lines faster than mine can. I watch the muscle in his jaw jump. "Where did you get this?" he says. It's the tone he uses when a tool is not where he left it. "My inbox," I say, after I asked for my records. You know, as the person who actually had the stuff pumped into his veins. His fingers tighten on the paper. It crumples slightly. The coin rocks against the table and then settles. "They're just protecting themselves," he says. "Lawyers write letters. That's what they do." "They mention confidential agreements," I say. "Non-disclosure, life-saving care. You going to tell me what you signed?" He doesn't answer right away. He sets the paper down very carefully, like he's diffusing something. He sits across from me, the chair legs scraping against the tile. "When you were born," he starts, staring at the coffee steam instead of me. "They told us your immune system was a mess. Too weak, too reactive. They said you might not make it through a regular flu season." I wait. The fridge hums, the clock ticks over the stove. "They had this program," he says, "trials. They'd been testing new therapies. They said you were a candidate. They said it could save you." "Did they say some of the other candidates died?" I ask. His eyes flick up, meet mine, then drop. "They said there were risks," he says. "Every surgery, every medication has risks. They said without it, there was a good chance we'd be planning a funeral instead of a future." "So you signed," I say. "You signed NDAs. What did they give you in return? Free care? Money? A script to repeat if anyone asked questions?" He flinches. "There were financial pieces," he admits. "Coverage, write-offs, follow-up at no charge if we kept to the schedule. But it wasn't about the money." He looks up, and for a moment the interrogator and the father are both there in his eyes, fighting. "It was about you," he says. "I would have signed anything to keep you breathing." Mom has been standing in the doorway longer than I realize, one hand flat against the frame. Her face is pale, eyes rimmed red like she hasn't slept. "You think this is easy to hear?" she asks me. Her voice is too quiet, too sharp. "You think we did this because we wanted to play scientist with our baby? I think you did this and then lied about it for 17 years, I say. I think you watched me pass out and seize and get poked like a pincushion and called it sensitive, while you updated a subject status sheet in the basement." Tears spill over. She doesn't wipe them away. "There were other children," she says. Her gaze goes somewhere past me, past the kitchen, back to a ward full of cribs and monitors. I can still hear the alarms, the ventilators. I still see their parents in the hallway. They asked me if it was their fault. I didn't know what to tell them. Her hand lifts, trembles in the air. One night, one of the monitors went flat. Just a straight line. The sound cut through me. Nurses, doctors, everyone running. They couldn't bring him back. The next day, they moved the parents to a private consultation room. After that, their baby's name disappeared from the board. Just gone. Her voice breaks. She grabs the back of Dad's chair like she might fall. "You got sick after that," she whispers. "Fever, rash, the works. The doctor told us it was an expected reaction, part of the modulation." He smiled while he said it. All I could see was that straight line. She looks at me and there's a kind of terror there I almost don't recognize. "When your father said, 'What are you?' in that ER room, it wasn't because we thought you were some kind of monster," she says. "It was because I have spent your entire life afraid we made you into something fragile, something the world could just push over with the wrong germ." The coin is hot in my palm again. I flip it with my thumb, the metal clicking softly as it lands back on the table. "I'm not fragile," I say. "I'm pissed off. That's different." Dad scrubs a hand over his face. He looks older than he did yesterday. The legal email lies between us like a loaded weapon. "What are you going to do?" he asks. He's not asking in the way a parent asks about college or weekend plans. He's asking like a man who knows how operations implode when information leaks. I take a breath. I've rehearsed this part in my head already. countless times in the blue light of my laptop. I've already sent copies of the documents to an investigative journalist, I say. A real one, not a blogger. She's done stories on medical fraud, whistleblowers, corporate cover-ups. I used a secure upload. She has the intake forms, the subject list, the letter from Arcos, the email from their lawyers. Mom sinks into the nearest chair. The wood creaks under her. And I called a medical malpractice attorney, I add. Not the billboard kind. One who handles clinical trials and informed consent. He did a conflict check, made sure he hasn't worked for Arcos or the hospital. I gave him my entire file. He recorded our call. He told me not to delete anything, not to sign anything else, and not to meet with company reps alone. Dad stares at me like I've just spoken a foreign language he understands too well. You went outside the chain, he says. There's something like awe and fear mixed in his voice. You went off the record. No, I say. I tap the printed email. That's what this is. Off the record, off the books, threats and friendly reminders. I'm putting this on the record. Complaints, filings, a story someone has to answer for in public. A car passes outside, bass thudding faintly through the walls. The fridge kicks off with a soft click, leaving a brief vacuum of silence in the kitchen. Dad looks down at this coin, then back at me. I watch the realization hit, slow and heavy. 17 years of secrets he's kept in boxes and folders and quiet conversations with men in suits are about to be dragged into a place where he can't control who hears them. A place with transcripts, with file numbers, with permanent records he does not get to shred. Who else knows, he asks, voice low. I think of Mrs. Alvarez's shaking hands, of the journalist's steady practice questions over a secure line, of the lawyer's calm instructions as he listed next steps, board complaints, subpoenas, hearings. Enough, I say. Enough that if something happens to me, the story doesn't stop here. The clock over the stove ticks once, twice. In the next room, the house phone starts to ring, its old-fashioned chime cutting through the silence like an alarm. Caller ID flashes on the little screen, an unfamiliar number with the area code for downtown. I stand up, the coin in my fist, and head toward it. I stand up, the coin in my fist, and head toward it. The phone's shrill ring fills the hallway, bouncing off the framed school photos and the dent in the drywall from when I swung my backpack too hard sophomore year. The caller ID glows a cold, unfamiliar number with a downtown area code. Hello, I say. There's a short delay, the faint hiss of a recorded line. Then a calm voice. Is this the parent or legal guardian of... He says my full name, crisp, like he's reading from a file. Or the individual himself? This is him, I say. This is me. Mr. Reyes, my name is Daniel Cho, he says. I'm an attorney. We spoke briefly by email regarding possible representation. He sounds exactly like I expected a malpractice lawyer to sound. Measured, tired, like he's seen too much of this. I've reviewed the documents you sent, he goes on. The neonatal protocol, the subject list, the email from Arcos's legal department. I'd like to meet in person to discuss next steps. It's important we get your evidence organized properly. Think chain of custody, like a criminal case. You okay to come down this week? I roll the coin between my fingers, metal warm and slick. Yeah, I say. My parents too. Good, he says. We're not going to do this halfway. 3 days later, we sit in a conference room that smells like paper, old coffee, and copier toner. The blinds are half closed, slicing the sunlight into narrow bands across the table. A white noise machine hums softly in the corner, like distant static. Cho sits at the head of the table with a legal pad and a stack of colored folders. He's younger than Dad, older than my teachers, tie loosened just enough to look human. This is how we treat it, he says, tapping his pen once. Every lab result, every form, every recording gets time-stamped, witnessed, and sealed. You assume you're the one on trial. That way, if they try to flip the narrative, you're already ready. He slides a list toward us. It's a checklist, neat boxes waiting for ink. DNA test results, hospital birth records, neonatal trial protocols, Arcos correspondence, nurse statement. Witness accounts from parents, if available. Their lawyers will attack the chain, he says. They'll say documents are incomplete, altered, misinterpreted. Our job is to make every step of how you got each piece boringly, painfully clear. The coin rests on the table by my elbow, dull brass against the smooth wood. Dad sits across from me, shoulders hunched a little like he's in a briefing he doesn't want to be in. Mom holds a styrofoam cup of water with both hands, fingers white at the knuckles. What about the NDAs? Dad asks, voice low. I signed non-disclosure agreements. They said we couldn't talk about the protocol, not to anyone. Cho looks directly at him. Contracts don't trump the law, he says. You can't sign away a child's right to informed consent or a state's interest in investigating harm. NDAs that try to silence evidence of wrongdoing are, at minimum, unenforceable in this context. At worst, they're part of the problem. So they can't come after us? Mom asks. Take the house, sue us? They can threaten, he says, and they will, but if they push too hard, they look like what they are. A company trying to shut up a victim. That's not a good look in front of a jury or a medical board. The phrase medical board hangs in the air. I think of Dr. Lang sitting on some raised platform, judging other people's ethics while his own stay buried. We're going to file 2 things, Cho says. A formal complaint with the state medical board against Dr. Lang as principal investigator, and a complaint with the hospital's ethics committee about undisclosed experimentation on newborns. Both will attach your evidence. He opens a folder and lays out clear plastic sleeves, each with a white strip along the top for labels. For a second, I flash on the nurse bagging my coin in radiology. Same sound when the plastic flexes. Home is fine for prep, he says. You don't have to do this here, but however you do it, label, date, initial. No loose papers, no stacks out of order. If something goes missing, I need to know when and how. At home that night, the kitchen transforms into an evidence lab. We clear the table of placemats and salt shakers, leaving just a legal pad, a black pen, and a cardboard box of supplies Cho sent ahead. Evidence sleeves, sticky tabs, a roll of tamper-evident tape with tiny red letters along the edge. The vent above us hums, blowing slightly cooler air as the AC kicks on. The sound is a constant low backdrop, steady as a heartbeat monitor. I lay out the DNA report first. The percentages stare up at me, zeros where there should be lines connecting me to them. I slide the pages into a sleeve, smoothing the plastic so there are no air bubbles, like I'm sealing in a specimen. On the label strip, I print Exhibit A, Consumer DNA Report, Subject versus Putative Father and Mother. Mom watches, a tissue crumpled in her hand. She reaches for the pen when I finish. Initial here, I say gently, pointing to the corner. Witnessed by you that this is what we sent and received. Her initials are small, shaky. The hospital birth summary goes next. Then Keller's note about special access protocols. Then the photo of my baby self labeled Subject 7. Each one gets a sleeve. Each sleeve gets a label. Dad handles the stapler, flipping the metal arm down with quick, precise motions. Click, click, the sound punctuating our breathing. We slide Mrs. Alvarez's statement into its own sleeve. Her handwriting is neat, measured. Not a nurse's rushed scrawl, but something she took time with. At the bottom, her signature and the date sit next to a notary stamp, the raised seal visible under the light when I tilt it. Chain of custody, I murmur. What? Dad asks. Nothing, I say. Just, this is real now. When we get to the Arcos letter and the email from their lawyers, Dad hesitates. His fingers hover over the pages, then curl into fists. I knew they'd send something, he says. I didn't think they'd go after a retired nurse. Bullies always start with the easiest target, Mom says quietly. Then louder, tape, please. We seal the sleeves with strips of tamper-evident tape, red letters forming a line across the top. If anyone peels it back, it will show. That's the point. The complaints themselves are another kind of paperwork. Cho emails us drafts. We print them out, the printer whining as it feeds each sheet. The language is blunt in a way hospital forms never are. Allegations of unethical human subject research. Failure to obtain informed consent. Suppression of adverse event data. My name appears as complainant. Under that, in parentheses, Subject 7. We sign in blue ink, at Cho's insistence. Easier to distinguish originals from copies. Dad's signature lands on the line marked Parent, Witness to Events. Mom's on Parent as well. We drive to a shipping store together to send the packets. The air inside smells like cardboard and printer ink. A scale beeps as the clerk weighs our envelopes. She slaps tracking stickers on each one, hands us a receipt with numbers and barcodes. Keep that, I say, folding it carefully. Proof we sent them when we did. At home, I take a photo of the receipt, then email it to myself. Then to Cho. Backups of backups. The medical board's response comes faster than I expect. An official-looking envelope appears in our mailbox, mixed in with coupons and a glossy supermarket ad. The seal on the top of the letterhead is embossed, heavy under my thumb. We are in receipt of your complaint regarding Dr. Matthew Lang, it says. Based on the seriousness of the allegations and preliminary review of the materials provided, the board has voted to initiate a formal disciplinary proceeding. There's a date, there is a time, there's a line that says, "Proceeding will be open to the public and the press in accordance with state law." My heart spikes. I read that line 3 times, then carry the letter to the kitchen like it's made of glass. Dad is at the table, turning the coin over and over between his fingers, the metal clicking softly against his wedding ring. Mom sits beside him, staring at an untouched cup of coffee. They scheduled it, I say. I slide the letter between them. The board hearing next month. Dad reads silently. I watch his eyes move, his jaw tense. The hand holding the coin goes still. "So that's it," he says finally. We go in, we put everything on the table, and he sits there and pretends he doesn't remember turning his trial into a body count. "You don't have to testify," Mom says softly, not looking at him. "They have the documents. They have our signatures, our son. You've done enough." He stares at the letterhead, at the seal, at the line about public and press. "In the army, we had this saying," he murmurs. "If you see something, say something," was for posters. The real rule was, if you see something and say nothing, it's on you when it goes wrong again. He looks up at me. I see fear there, and something else. "If I testify," he says slowly, "they might decide I'm not just a victim. They might decide I'm part of it. The guy who signed the forms and kept his mouth shut, I could lose my job, my benefits, everything we've built." The vent above us clicks on, sending a soft stream of air down over the table. The letter flutters slightly at the edge. "And if you don't?" I ask. He looks at the coin, then at me. He closes his fist around the brass like he's gripping a shield. "Then I'm the man who watched his kid get turned into Subject 7 and stayed silent even when he finally had a shot at doing something about it," he says. Silence stretches between us, thick as syrup. The fridge hums, a car passes outside, music thumping faintly through the wall. Dad takes a breath, long and slow, like he's about to walk into a room full of brass and give bad news. "Tell Cho he can put me on the witness list," he says. "I'll speak, under oath, on the record." The coin glints in his hand as he says it. Not burning this time, just solid and heavy. For the first time since that ER room, the word father doesn't feel like a question he's afraid to sign. For the first time since that ER room, the word father doesn't feel like a question he's afraid to sign. On the morning of the hearing, it's still dark when we pull into the State Medical Board's parking garage. Concrete pillars, echoing footsteps, the smell of exhaust and old rain. I sit in the back seat with my tie slightly too tight and the coin in my palm. The metal is cool and solid, pressing a circle into my skin, as if it's trying to remind me I'm here, that I'm not just a number on a page. Dad kills the engine. The car's vents tick as they cool. In the rearview mirror, I see his eyes meet mine. "You good?" he asks. "No," I say, "but I'm going in anyway." A corner of his mouth twitches. "Yeah," he murmurs. "That's my kid." Inside, the boardroom really does feel like a courtroom someone forgot to call by that name. Raised dais at the front. 7 board members in dark suits behind slim microphones. State flag and U.S. flag on either side, their fabric barely stirring in the AC. Rows of chairs for the public. A long table at the front for the parties. Pitchers of water sweating onto coasters. Cameras line the back wall, red lights blinking, lenses like black eyes. Reporters murmur to one another, shuffling notebooks and phones. Every now and then a camera whirs softly as it refocuses. I can feel every lens on the back of my neck. We sit at one of the tables. Cho on the aisle, then me, then Mom and Dad. He slides a folder in front of me, the clear sleeves inside catching the overhead light. "Remember," he says quietly, "they're not doing you a favor by letting you speak. You're a complainant, you have standing, you have evidence. Take your time." The chair of the board, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, taps her microphone. The soft feedback hushes the room. "This hearing is now in session," she says. "Case number," she rattles off a string of digits. "In the matter of Dr. Matthew Lang." The name ripples through the room like a cold draft. On the opposite side, Lang sits with his own counsel. He looks smaller than he did in the gala photos, but only a little. White coat swapped for a dark suit and a subtle tie, hair combed perfectly into place. He carries himself like he's still the one running the show. He raises his right hand when the clerk asks him to, swears to tell the truth, then settles into the witness chair facing the board. A microphone stands in front of him, its red ring glowing. "Dr. Lang," the chair says, "can you explain in your own words the nature of the neonatal trial under review today?" He smooths his tie, leans toward the mic. The study in question was a standard of care adjunct trial, he says, voice warm and resonant like he's lecturing a classroom. We were exploring immune modulation therapies that, at the time, were widely considered promising for high-risk neonates. All procedures were conducted within accepted risk parameters. Accepted risk. He talks about isolated adverse events, about complex clinical pictures, about parental misunderstandings, of consent forms that were, in his words, robust and thorough. He doesn't say the word child once, not even when a board member asks about mortality. In any high-risk cohort, he says smoothly, there is an expected rate of non-survival independent of research interventions. We took care to ensure no subject was exposed to undue harm beyond what their underlying conditions necessitated. Subjects, non-survival. He turns lives into statistics with the ease of someone who's done it for decades. Cho takes notes, pen ticking softly against the pad in short strokes. Every time Lang says expected mortality, the pen presses harder. When it's Cho's turn, he stands with a stack of exhibits in hand. The clerk comes over and they begin the dance of marking. Complainant's Exhibit A, Cho says. Consumer DNA report demonstrating genetic incompatibility between subject and listed parents, making traditional paternity impossible. The clerk takes the sleeve from him, peels back the tamper tape enough to slip a small sticker on the label. A. We watch the process like a liturgy. Exhibit B, Cho continues. Hospital record indicating special access protocols for infant chart. Note the lack of explanation. Exhibit C, Neonatal Immune Modulation Protocol. Arcos Medical Research Group, sourced from Institutional Review Board archives, includes consent language and risk descriptions. One by one, the board members flip through copies of the documents. Pages rustle, pens scratch. Cho paces their attention like a metronome. Dr. Lang described these as standard of care, and he says, yet his own protocol refers to high-risk experimental agents and notes an elevated mortality rate within trial cohort. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He moves on to the redacted subject list. Exhibit F, he says, Program Aegis tracking sheet, recovered from the home of Mr. and Mrs. Reyes. Note the numbering of infants as subjects 1 through 9. Note the status column. Deceased. Lost to follow-up. Living. Someone in the audience sucks in a breath when they see the word deceased repeated down the page. One of the board members frowns, tapping the term Program Aegis with the end of his pen. Dr. Lang, the chair, says, this looks like a separate name from the public-facing protocol. Why? Lang's smile gets thinner. That appears to be internal shorthand used by my team, he says. It does not reflect any attempt to conceal the nature of the study from appropriate oversight. Cho is ready. Exhibit G, he says. Internal email from Arcos executive to Dr. Lang, retrieved via public records request from a partner institution. It reads, and I quote, we need to keep Aegis under the radar until we can improve the numbers. Pull any mention of the name from patient-facing documents. Continue enrollment at current pace. He lets the words sit there. Under the radar, improve the numbers, current pace. The board chair's mouth tightens. The doctor's attorney objects on some procedural basis, but the chair overrules, noting the email's metadata and authenticity verification. They call Dad next. He walks to the witness chair like he's carrying a pack. Back straight, jaw tight. He raises his right hand, swears in, sits. His fingers twitch toward his pocket, but the coin is with me. I see his hand close on air, then curl into a fist on his knee. Cho's questions are gentle at first. Tell the board how old your son was when the hospital approached you about the trial, he says. 2 days, Dad answers. His voice is steady, but I know the work it takes to keep it that way. They said his immune system was wrong, that without intervention, we were looking at a lot of hospitalizations, maybe worse. Did they describe the intervention as standard care? They said it was newer, Dad says, ahead of the curve. They also said we were lucky to qualify, like we'd won something. He talks about signing the consent, about being told he couldn't discuss details outside the care team, about NDAs slid across a table with phrases like proprietary methods and trade secrets. Did anyone ever say the words, you are enrolling your newborn as a human subject in an experimental trial with elevated risk of death? Cho asks. Dad's mouth twists. No, he says. If they had, I would have asked different questions. When he steps down, his shoulders look a fraction lighter, like saying it out loud has redistributed the weight. Then it's my turn. The clerk swears me in. My palm is sweaty against the raised seal of the board's little oath card. I sit, the chair's vinyl squeaking under me. The microphone's red ring glows inches from my mouth. The coin lies flat on the table to my right, inside a small clear bag the clerk labeled earlier. Exhibit J Subject's Totem. It looks strange in plastic, but I wanted it visible, not just in my hand. A small, solid piece of the story that doesn't speak their language. Cho nods to me. Can you tell the board, he says, what it feels like to grow up as Subject 7 without knowing you were Subject 7? I look up at the row of faces. Some are skeptical, some are openly angry, though not at me. The cameras hum behind me, catching every twitch. It feels like being a glitch in your own life, I say. Like the paperwork doesn't quite match the story you've been told. I talk about fainting spells and sensitivity, about dad pocketing hospital printouts, about waking up in that ER, the fluorescent light buzzing, the nurse's pen hovering, and hearing my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who showed me how to change a tire, whisper, "What are you?" I let the words land. At the time, I thought he meant, something was wrong with me, I say, like I was a mistake. What I know now is that a long time ago, a doctor convinced him his son was more experiment than person, that my value was data points and immune modulation for future patients, not just the fact that I was his kid. The room is quiet. Even the white noise machine seems to hush for a second. I take a breath, glance at Cho, then hold up my phone. With the board's permission, he says, we'd like to play a short audio recording from a sworn statement given by retired pediatric nurse Maria Alvarez. She was present on the neonatal ward during this trial. The chair nods. Proceed. Cho plugs a cord into my phone, adjusts a small portable speaker the clerk provides, checks the levels like he's done this 100 times. He gives me a little nod. I hit play. Mrs. Alvarez's voice fills the room, a little thinner through the recording but still steady. We were told not to keep notes, not to ask questions, she says. Just follow orders. Extra blood work, extra scans. There were babies with armed guards outside their rooms, men with earpieces, not our usual security. We were told it was about drug theft, but nobody guards Tylenol with a Glock. A couple of board members exchange glances. Someone in the audience murmurs, then goes silent again. We called them by their names, her recorded voice continues. But in the meetings they were subjects, numbers. When an event happened, that's what they called it, not a death, an event. Families were shuffled into side rooms, files were locked. We were warned. If we talked, we'd lose our jobs, our pensions, everything. The recording clicks off. For a moment, all I hear is the faint hiss of the speakers and the rush of air through the ceiling vents. I look up at the board. The people who did this to us, I say, have spent years getting promoted, getting titles, sitting on panels about ethics. The only way anyone ever knows kids like me existed is if you stop believing them and start believing what's on the paper. The chair leans back. Her fingers drum once on the edge of the dais, then still. Dr. Lang, she says slowly, turning her microphone slightly toward him. Did this board know about armed security on the neonatal ward for this trial? His attorney starts to object, but she lifts a hand. This is not a courtroom, she says. This is an administrative proceeding, and I am asking a direct question. Lang shifts in his seat. For high-profile protocols involving proprietary compounds, certain security measures were advised, he says. That's not unusual in research environments. On a newborn unit, one of the other board members says flatly. Silence. The chair confers briefly with the members to her left and right, voices low. Then she straightens, adjusts her glasses, and speaks into the mic. Given the gravity of the allegations, she says, the volume of documentary evidence presented, and the serious questions raised about both ethical conduct and potential criminal liability, this board will not be closing this matter today. She looks toward the back of the room where 2 uniformed security officers stand by the door, arms folded. Officers, she says calmly, please step forward. They move down the aisle, footsteps muffled on the carpet, badges catching the light. Dr. Lang, the chair says, her voice carrying easily over the rustle of the crowd. Effective immediately, your license to practice medicine in the state is summarily suspended pending further action. Additionally, this board is referring this case, along with all associated materials, to the Office of the State Attorney General for criminal investigation. A low gasp rolls through the room, cameras whir to life, flashbulbs pop, strobes of white against the wood paneling. Across the table, Lang's face finally changes. The smooth practice mask cracks, just for a second, as he looks from the officers to the pile of exhibits with my subject number on them. The security officers step up beside his table, not touching him, just there. A new kind of guard outside a very different room. My hand finds the coin through the plastic of the evidence bag. For the first time, it doesn't feel like a question mark. It feels like a seal on something that can't be shoved back in a box in a basement. My hand finds the coin through the plastic of the evidence bag. For the first time, it doesn't feel like a question mark. It feels like a seal on something that can't be shoved back in a box in a basement. Weeks blur, but the story doesn't. It keeps playing back on screens I don't control. I'm on the couch one afternoon, homework open and mostly ignored, when the local news runs the segment again. The volume is low, but my own voice still cuts through the living room. More experiment than person, TV Me says, standing at the mic, coin in the evidence bag glinting under boardroom lights. The anchor's voice comes in over footage of Lang being walked down a courthouse corridor. Shoulders a little hunched now, his suit hanging looser somehow. Reporters crowd the hall, microphones thrust out, flashes popping. Dr. Matthew Lang appeared today for an initial hearing following a disciplinary referral from the state medical board, the anchor says. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office confirms charges of fraud, concealment of adverse events, and negligent homicide. The camera cuts to that spokesperson, serious, tidy, reading from a prepared statement. Our office takes allegations of unethical human experimentation extremely seriously, she says. We are in the process of reviewing extensive documentation, including internal emails, trial protocols, and sworn witness statements. Sworn witness statements? I know mine is in that stack. So is Dad's. So is Mrs. Alvarez's. They roll a clip of me leaving the board building, the day of the hearing. Camera lights in my face, questions flying. How does it feel to confront the doctor who ran the trial? Do you blame your parents? What do you say to other families who might be affected? In the footage, I keep my eyes forward, hand in my pocket around the coin, Cho at my shoulder like a quiet shadow. Watching it now, it feels like I'm studying a version of myself in a file. Subject 7, post-hearing. I mute the TV and scroll my phone instead, but there's nowhere to hide from it there either. Headlines, think pieces, a hashtag that uses my last name with words like ethics and accountability and medical miracle or human experiment. Most of them don't use the phrase Subject 7, they use my actual name. The first time I see it in print, it's in a long article that starts with, 17 years ago, a newborn boy was enrolled in an experimental trial. This week, he told the state medical board what it felt like to grow up without knowing that. I read that paragraph 3 times, the coin hot between my fingers. A boy, not a subject. A newborn, not an enrollment. Other families start coming forward. They find me in comment sections, in emails forwarded through Cho's office, in messages Mrs. Alvarez prints out and brings in a folder. My daughter was in the same wing, one writes. They told us her death was complications. We signed papers we didn't understand. Our son has the same scar, another says, attaching a photo of a kid my age lifting his shirt to show a pale line near his ribs, IV burn faded but still visible. Do you have this too? I touch the spot on my own skin, feel the matching ridge, evidence etched into flesh instead of paper. Support groups spin up in church basements and community centers. We go to one on a Tuesday night. The room smells like coffee and styrofoam cups, and that particular dust that collects on folding chairs. A box of tissues sits in the middle of the circle, next to a plastic container of supermarket cookies. There are 6 of us the first night. Surviving trial kids, though nobody uses that phrase out loud. A girl with an inhaler, she clicks nervously in her hand. A guy who keeps rubbing the inside of his elbow where an IV scar hides. A quiet kid with big headphones around his neck who doesn't say much at first, just listens. We go around the circle, names, ages, what we know, which ranges from, my mom gave me a folder after your story aired, to, I found my subject number on a list my grandmother kept hidden in her Bible. When it's my turn, everybody already knows my name. They pretend they don't. It's strangely kind. I'm still figuring out what all of this means, I say. I don't have answers, just more accurate questions than I had before. Someone snorts softly at that. The girl with the inhaler raises her cup. To accurate questions, she says. We clink styrofoam, it's ridiculous, it helps. Outside of basements and boardrooms, the legal machinery grinds on. Dad spends hours on calls with Cho and with investigators from the AG's office. They enroll him in a formal whistleblower program. The paperwork is thick, but the headline is simple. Limited immunity in exchange for full cooperation. I sit at the dining table while he signs, the brass of the coin catching the overhead light as it lies between us. When he's done, he pushes the last page away, exhales, and looks at me. I told them everything, he says, not just what Lang did, what I didn't do. He picks up the coin and weighs it in his hand for a moment. Then he stands, comes around to my side of the table, and presses it into my palm. His hand is warm and calloused. He doesn't let go right away. "I didn't ask what you were because I doubted you," he says quietly. "I asked because I doubted myself. I was scared I'd made you into something breakable and then lied about it so I wouldn't have to face that." The coin is small between our hands, but it feels like it takes up the whole room. "I don't know if you can forgive that," he says. "I'm not asking you to, I'm just done pretending it didn't happen." I close my fingers around the coin and pull my hand back slowly. It's heavier now, but in a different way. Later, at another doctor's office, the new specialist Cho recommended, I sit in an exam room that smells like lemon cleaner and disposable gloves. The vent hums overhead, softer than the hospital's roar. The doctor sits on a swivel stool, tablet in hand. He's already read the file. The real one. The one Cho forced Arcos to cough up under subpoena. "Okay," he says, "here's what we know for sure, based on your labs and the trial data. We'll go through it in plain language. Stop me if I use jargon." He talks about immune markers and long-term risks. He also talks about what's normal for me now, what's stable, what we can monitor instead of fear. 3 times he pauses to ask, "Does that make sense?" I nod, and for the first time in any medical room, I don't feel like a chart being explained around. I feel like a person being briefed about his own body. After the appointment, I sit in my room with the new printouts spread on my desk. They're color-coded, annotated, full of "you may experience" and "call us if," but none of them say subject or protocol. My name is printed at the top of every page. The vent above my bed hums. Downstairs, the TV murmurs. Another news segment, probably, another talking head, saying my last name like it's a case study. I turn the coin over in my fingers, tracing each nick and ridge, thinking about all the places it's been. Hallway talisman, basement evidence, Exhibit J. Heirloom from a man who thought he was saving me and ended up almost burying me in secrecy instead. The question that started all of this, "What are you?" doesn't feel like a weapon anymore. It feels like a prompt I get to answer on my own terms. I'm not a subject number. I'm not a glitch in somebody's trial. I'm not the sum of their risks and errors. I'm the kid who turned their experiment into a record they can't rewrite.